My name is Dr. Kieran O'Keefe. I'm Associate Professor of Education and Research at Buckinghamshire New University. In addition to being Programme Lead for a number of undergraduate and postgraduate programmes, I'm also a researcher in parapsychology. Parapsychology is the scientific study of the paranormal, and I published over 30 papers and several books on parapsychology and lectured and given presentations at various conferences worldwide, and also appeared in some media talking about parapsychology and the paranormal. I thought this course might be of interest. It's not on the syllabus, but it's certainly an interesting aspect of psychology. For the first lecture, what I'm going to do is define parapsychology. What is it? A very broad definition is that it's the scientific study of the paranormal. But the word paranormal can mean many different things. It could incorporate things like ghosts, the Loch Ness Monster, alien abduction, UFOs, you name it. But actually, parapsychologists don't look at all of those areas. They're specifically interested in three main areas. The first one is extrasensory perception, abbreviated to ESP. And that covers three alleged abilities: telepathy, precognition, and clairvoyance. Telepathy is mind-to-mind communication. Precognition is predicting the future. And the vast majority of evidence that parapsychologists are presented with are prophetic dreams. That is the claim that people dream of a future event. So, for example, with the 9/11 incident in America, I was based in a lab in Hertfordshire, and following that incident received hundreds of emails, letters and phone calls from individuals claiming that they had dreamt that it was going to happen. Whilst that's interesting, it's not necessarily proof of precognition because you're hearing about it after the fact. The third area of ESP that's studied is clairvoyance, and this is really a French word that translates to seeing without your eyes. Best way to illustrate this is if you did a drawing and put it in an envelope and asked me to work out what it was, I might use clairvoyance to interact with that drawing. However, if I was accurate, is it because of clairvoyance? Or is it because I was able to get the drawing from your mind using telepathy? Or is it because I dreamt about the drawing a few days ago, and when you asked me to work out the drawing in the envelope, I suddenly remembered my dream, recounted it, and therefore was accurate? So sometimes it's very difficult to disentangle between telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition, which is why we give that umbrella term ESP, or extrasensory perception. The second area of study for parapsychologists is psychokinesis, or PK. Some people call it telekinesis. Psychokinesis is the action of the mind on an object, trying to get an object to move, if you will, without touching it, just through the use of your mind. And we typically differentiate in parapsychology between macro and micro PK. Macro PK is psychokinesis that you can see. So, for example, if you try to get a glass to move off a table, or if you try to bend a spoon, you can see that happening. That would be macro PK. Micro PK, on the other hand, is the claims of psychokinesis to be able to move objects, but you can't necessarily see it with the naked eye. You need some sort of monitoring equipment to be able to see it. A prime example would be some studies that were done in Princeton University, of all places, back in the 1980s in the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, some work that was done by Brenda Dunn and Robert Yarn. They were looking at the possibility that individuals could affect the decay of radioactive material. You can't see that happening with your eye, but actually you need some sort of monitoring equipment to see it happen. Parapsychologists are also interested in PK because there is the idea, or this theory within parapsychology, that some poltergeist activity can actually be caused by the person. And poltergeist is an example of a type of ghost, and I'll come to that in a second. But some parapsychologists feel that poltergeist phenomena could be regarded as a form of psychokinesis rather than an actual ghost itself. The third area of study in parapsychology is something called survival or after-death communication. Effectively, those moments of evidence that give us some indication that there is life after death. And the prime examples would be hauntings and mediumship. Mediumship is when a person claims to be able to talk to spirit, talk to ghosts. Within parapsychology, there are probably about 200, maybe 300 at most, parapsychologists trained to PhD level worldwide. It is a very small subdiscipline of psychology, and the majority of those parapsychologists are what we call proof-oriented parapsychologists. That is, they're looking for proof of all of these paranormal phenomena that I mentioned within the lab. Process-oriented parapsychologists are those that think that we already have the evidence for those phenomena, but we want to understand the conditions under which they happen the best. So, for example, with telepathy, does it work better between people that know each other, or twins, for example? Establishing that telepathy exists, but let's try and work out a way in which it can happen at its best, at its optimum, if you will. Similarly, parapsychologists can take the approach of looking for the natural explanations for these paranormal phenomena. So what I've tried to highlight for you in this first part is the definition of parapsychology, and you can see how, although the paranormal and the paranormal word itself can indicate many, many different things, actually parapsychologists are only interested in three particular areas: ESP, PK, and survival. For the next part, what I'd like to do is focus on haunting experiences and look at some of the natural explanations to do with the environment.